So hello everyone, and on behalf of FCAC, I'd like to thank you all for coming. Glad you've made it out in this not so happy weather. So I'd like to first thank staff from CARE Awards, Lauren White and Megan Nobrega, and I hope you had the opportunity to visit them at their poster earlier today. I know they'll be around for the rest of today and also tomorrow as well. Lauren and Megan contributed to the design and implementation of our two studies that I'll be talking about with you today. So today, I'm happy to be here with you to share how the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada has leveraged mobile technology to deliver our financial education messaging. And by doing so, we've been able to create sustained behavior change among non-budgeters. Now, why did we focus increasing budgeting behaviors specifically? It's because we know that budgets act as a self-control mechanism, and research has shown that budgeters use priority planning to reduce their overspending. So today, I'd like to talk to you about an overview of the methodology behind our two budgeting studies, as well as the key findings from these studies. So for those of you who aren't as familiar with CARE Rewards is a mobile application that aims to empower Canadians to adopt better lifestyles and healthier choices. And it does so by offering Canadians a chance to receive loyalty rewards points, such as Petro points or Scene points, in exchange for reading educational messages, completing quizzes, or watching short videos. So in 2016, FCAC developed a pilot study on the CARE Rewards app, and we offered our studies to users in BC and Newfoundland and Labrador. We had two goals of the pilot. The first was ultimately to increase the budgeting behaviors among non-budgeters. And the second goal was to evaluate if a mobile platform was an effective way to do so. So initially, approximately 11,000 CARE users in BC and Newfoundland and Labrador received a first financial education messaging which targeted budgeting behaviors. We were then able to identify budgeters from non-budgeters, and over the course of 3 weeks, we targeted these non-budgeters with further financial education messaging. We aimed to increase their confidence to budget, their knowledge to budget, and their budgeting behaviors. And we found that it was successful in doing so. For instance, we were able to increase the budgeting behaviors among these non-budgeters by 14%. So 14% adopted the use of a budget by the end of the pilot. But it was also important to us to evaluate the long-term impacts of our study. So that's why, about 18 months later, we participated in a return to sample, and we call this our follow-up study. There are three main groups of participants in our follow-up study. The first is who we call our reference group. So these are individuals who had a budget at the beginning of the pilot and therefore only received that first initial financial education message. The second group and third group are our intervention group. So these are individuals who received all of our financial education messaging, and by the end of the pilot, they either had a budget or they had planned to budget. So in total, approximately 5,000 participants completed our follow-up study. We had three goals of the follow-up. The first was, as I had mentioned, evaluate the persistence of budgeting behaviors. The second was to determine if a budget had an impact on their financial outcomes and attitudes. And the third was to identify any barriers to budgeting that existed among non-budgeters at the follow-up. So we found overwhelmingly positive results. We found that our budgeting financial education messaging in the pilot creates sustained behavior change among non-budgeters. So for example, among our intervention group who had a budget by the end of the pilot, we found that 54% persisted in their budgeting behaviors 18 months later. But as I mentioned, we wanted to take this a step further. Yes, we were able to increase the budgeting behaviors of non-budgeters, but why is this important? How does this relate to financial outcomes and attitudes? And we found a positive link between budgeting behaviors and attitudes. So for example, among the budgeters at the follow-up, we found that budgeters were using their budgets to pay down their debts, save for emergencies, and to increase their savings for the future. We also found a positive link between budgeting behaviors and their ability to pay their bill payments. So we asked everyone at the follow-up, thinking of the last 12 months, how well have you been keeping up with your financial commitments? When we look at our reference group, so here these are individuals who began the pilot with a budget, only received that first financial education message, and are now still budgeting 18 months later. We see that 85% are keeping up well or very well. I believe 84, sorry, are keeping up well or very well. Now when we compare this to the non-budgeters who did not adopt the use of a budget by the end of the follow-up, so 18 months later, oh, I skipped my punchline there. Well, anyway, we find that 45% are keeping up well or very well. And then when we look at the groups who had a budget as a result of our intervention and are still budgeting, we see that 70% are keeping up with their bill payments well or very well. So we see that they're outperforming the non-budgeters and having an outcome that closely resembles to those individuals who have been budgeting for a longer period of time. We see a similar pattern when we look at confidence to budget. So we see, as you might expect, individuals who are budgeting are more confident in their ability to make and follow a budget. But why is this important? It's important because it shows the positive feedback loop between budgeting behaviors and confidence. So as individuals learn from their trials and errors and their successes and failures, they're able to increase their confidence and persist in their budgeting habits. It's also important when we consider barriers to budgeting. For example, at the follow-up, we asked individuals what their top barriers to budgeting were. And the two most common barriers were that they didn't need a budget to manage their finances. And the second one was that they felt overwhelmed managing their money. Among these overwhelmed non-budgeters, only 38% are confident or very confident in their ability to make and follow a budget. This group in particular is a vulnerable group, and we know that because we found that they had lower incomes, a lower proportion were keeping up with their financial commitments well or very well, and almost half had a focus on the present day rather than saving for the future. But as always, we have good news around the corner. We also asked all of our non-budgeters, what is one thing that you would change in your money management abilities? And we found that the top areas that they wish to change, for example, setting financial goals and building savings, prioritizing spending, and having a higher awareness of where their money is going, directly aligns with the benefits that budgeters were receiving from having a budget. So we see that 31% of budgeters are using their budgets to be aware of where their money is going. And we also see that 21% are using their budgets to set financial goals and build savings. So in conclusion, I'd like to leave you with a summary of our key findings. The first key finding was that financial education can have a sustained impact on budgeting behaviors. The second finding was that budgeting behaviors could be associated with positive financial outcomes and attitudes. And our third finding is that budgets can help individuals achieve their money management goals. So I'd like to thank you all for listening, and I'll hand it on to Nick. Thank you.